Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm-hearted, if maybe not very warm-temperatured, welcome to the brand new Human Gardener stage at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. This is day 3 for us, and we've basically moved in now. This feels like our home. My name is Sarah Owen Hughes. I'm a professional horticulturist, and I'm here with my great friend Faith Douglas, who's a curator at a local arboretum. And we have brought together a selection of the most interesting people that we know from the breadth, depth, width of horticulture and related industries. So the whole idea is that throughout the day, there'll be 15-minute chats. You can come and sit down, rest your feet, and then go off and spend more money in the tents, because that's what we're all doing. Have your coffee while you're in here, and hopefully see something and hear something that you've not heard of before that will hopefully inspire you. And we're so excited to have our furthest travelled guest to come with us today. We're welcoming Ems Finch onto the stage. She's a London-based artist. She's always been hugely inspired by the natural world, as you can see from her gorgeous paintings that we have here. She grew up on a farm in Wiltshire. Following some really deep trauma during COVID lockdown, she was left with PTSD, which I think a lot of us can relate to, and couldn't look up far for fear of flashbacks. But the colours that she saw in the trees and walking around and interrelating with trees has really helped her mind heal. So she now spends time sketching in woods every day. So she's going to tell us a little bit about that, and slightly more worryingly, she's going to try and get Faith and I to create some art on the stage. So can you please give a very, very warm Harrogate welcome to Ems Finch, our artist.
So welcome, Ems. It's lovely to see you. So I have to say, Ems is a great friend of mine. We met via social media.
We did.
The great thing about social media, via Instagram actually.
Yeah.
During one of the lockdowns, didn't we? And
we did.
I think you contacted me, and we had this weird chat, and we got to know each other.
Well, it was meant to be a 10-minute chat. I think it went on for about an hour and a half.
Days, I think. It went on for days, actually. And I ended up going down to stay with Ems last summer, which was wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And I took my daughter. We've got daughters of very similar ages. They're both 4. And my daughter, being 3 at the time, was going to London. And all she knew about London was that she would be visiting the Queen. That's where the Queen lives. So she assumed Ems is the Queen, and the Queen has a little girl called Martha. And still to this day, she will say to me, "When are we next going to visit the Queen?"
Oh, I love that.
So that has stuck. That has Ems is a queen.
We haven't corrected her yet.
So your artwork is absolutely inspiring. The story
Thank
is
you.
inspiring. But I'm a tree geek. I love trees. So just tell me, why exactly? What is it about trees?
Well, so Sarah touched on my story briefly. I had some PTSD. Every time I looked up, it would trigger a flashback in my head. And one day I was looking out at the common opposite my house, and it was almost as if I was drawn outside. And I went out into the woods, and for some reason, I can't describe why, I walked really slowly, and I started noticing things. And after months of just seeing no colour or foreboding dark colour, when I was looking down and trying not to look up, I suddenly noticed things around me. And one of the things was a pebble that was in a tree. And someone had gone round the local common and painted these beautiful pebbles and put them around to make everyone, happy. And this pebble said, "Be happy." And something about those words on that pebble in that tree really spoke to me. And I lay down underneath the tree. And I don't know why, but I suddenly took a really deep breath, and I looked up at the sky without physically looking up. And that was a moment for me that was huge. And I didn't know how to describe in words that moment. So I came back to my studio, and I just wanted to celebrate the colour that I was suddenly seeing all around me. So I got out my pinkest pink, it is a literal thing, pinkest pink, and I lay it down, and I started painting a tree from underneath it, so looking up the tree. And from then on, I just started painting. And after about 3 months, someone said to me, "You know what you've been doing, like spending all this time outside in the woods and painting these trees? You've been forest bathing." I was like, "What's that? I've never heard of this. What?" And I looked up on Instagram. I did a very simple forest bathing, came across Faith. And I just sent her a message saying, "This is going to sound really strange, but I've been forest bathing and not known that I have."
It's not strange.
and it's just totally changed my life. In about 6 or 7 months, I'd painted over 150 trees, all different sizes. I only brought a few tiny ones to show you today. But the process of painting, which we're going to go into in a minute when we do a bit of a demonstration, the 3-part process is now basically my therapy. I've realised that sometimes words aren't enough to express what's going on, and painting has filled that void.
So art is a huge therapy for many people, isn't it? Nature is a huge therapy.
Huge.
So blending those two things together is like magic, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how exactly, when you're painting, how does that affect your mental health, if you don't mind answering that?
So when I'm painting, when I'm going about my daily life, I come across emotions which I'm not sure how to deal with. And actually what I do now is I assign a colour and a shape to that emotion. And when I come back to the studio, I recall that colour and shape, and then I can start working through the painting. And it's 3 parts. The trunk, I paint out the emotions in the trunk in the dark colours. And sometimes my trunks are really gnarly, and you can really see that there's an emotion I've been grappling with. Then I work on the leaves, and I have real fun. I just let rip, put music on, dance, sing, paint. And then the last bit is the sky, and I apply that really methodically with a palette knife. And I like to think of it as like a stretch after exercise. It's kind of the final part of the painting. And every time I finish one, I reflect on it. I reflect on the emotion that I've been accepting. And it's hugely important. But I've taken that one step further, and I now go into the woods with a sketchbook every day. I drop my daughter off at nursery, go into the woods for half an hour, and it's my pause between mumming and arting. And it just sets me up for the day. And I've now started taking friends and clients into the woods with a sketchbook, and the change, taking them from their everyday stressful life with their shoulders all the way up here to coming out of the woods, and a couple of hours later doing some of my exercises, they're different people.
So are you going to show us how to draw? I am no artist. You'll soon see.
Yeah, I'm going to use my 3-step process I just talked about.
Okay.
So the trunk, the leaves, and the sky.
Yeah.
We're going to use...
Okay.
It's going to be something like this. We're using water-soluble crayons and a pen.
I'm going to put my glasses on. That's my attempt to make it look better.
Okie dokes. So we're actually going to draw this tree here.
Oh.
Beautiful tree. It's part of the Forest for Change that was planted outside Somerset House last summer.
Wow.
Really incredible. It's part of the London Biennale. Don't ask me what kind of tree it is, because...
It's an acer of some sort. It's a sycamore of some sort.
Lovely. So...
Looks like it's variegated as well.
every day's a school day, right? So...
Okay, look, you've got the advantage there. You've moved.
I'm so competitive.
It's not a competition.
No, it is. It is.
Right.
She's going to judge me. You said there'd be no judgments. That's not true.
Yeah. When I take people into the woods, the important thing is we start with breath work to calm ourselves. Really importantly, belly breathing to tell ourselves, our vagus nerve, that we are safe and we are calm. We go out of our sympathetic nervous system into our parasympathetic nervous system, and we then draw. So we're going to start with the trunk. And as you can see, it's taken from the perspective of underneath the tree. So instead of it being 2 parallel lines that we all think of as a trunk, it's actually more like an elongated triangle. So if you look at your piece of card, this is actually handmade rag paper, it's beautiful. You're moving, oh my goodness, I'm taking this very seriously. So, if you look at the picture on the screen, it's around the same dimensions as the piece of paper you've got in front of you. So along the bottom edge, I want you to find the middle of the page, because that's roughly where the left-hand line of the triangle starts. And then it's roughly towards the edge. I mark put 2 marks on the page, 1 in the middle, 1 towards the edge. And then just under halfway up the page, pretty much above the middle mark you've made, make another mark, and then join those 3 marks together and you've got your trunk. Brilliant. And now we're going to add some branches. Now you can't really see the branches very well on here from a distance, but I want you just to add some lines as if they're branches. Oh, Faith, I wish you could see.
Don't look.
Now, the wonderful thing about trees is that every single tree in the world is different and unique.
And they change all the time. They change through the day, don't they?
They do. They actually sag as the day goes on.
I know that feeling. It's been a long week.
So we've got our trunk, we've got our branches. You guys. We're now going to make a few little marks on the trunk with our black to make it look like a 3D form. So I don't know if you can see, but if you look at the shadows, they work in 3D. That's it, yeah. You can colour those in, you can do what you like, it's your tree. You've gone freestyle here. Okay. And next we're going to add the leaves. Now, what I said earlier about the trunks and the bare skeleton of a tree, this is where I get out the emotion. Once I've done that, I like to pause, look at it, reflect, and then make a conscious decision to move on to have some fun with the leaves and the colour. So we've got two colours that you're going to use today. We've got a dark green and a light green. These amazing water-soluble crayons. And if you squint your eyes and look at the picture, you'll be able to see that your eyes automatically filter out the middle tones, so you can only really see the darks and the lights. So we're going to start with the dark and go in there and just really
Properly
make
scribble.
some properly getting stuff out marks. Or just be curious and try and work out what the best marks that you want to make are. I mean, it's your tree. You can do what you like. I quite like using quite a firm pressure.
You have to put quite a lot of pressure on to make a proper colour as well, don't you?
You do.
So it's very, very physical.
Very, very
there.
physical. And that's why I love using crayons. It kind of brings me back to being a child and having that
Yes.
freedom of expressing yourself with colour. Because I feel like once we become adults, we almost need to give ourselves permission to do these kind of things. And we need to give ourselves permission to really let rip. And that's what art is all about. Really brilliant for anger.
Yeah.
Frustration.
See, I use pruning as my anger therapy. Oh, yeah. There's a good reason why I'm not a hairdresser. There'd be no hair left. Chop it all off.
Right, so once we put the dark bits in, then we go for our light highlights. And there's a reason why I'm going dark to light. It's because I'm an oil painter. Anyone who paints here will know that you can paint however you like, but I was taught to paint from the dark colours through to the lights. Watercolour is a total opposite. It's total voodoo to me. Anyone that can watercolour is just a god. But yeah, that's why we're working through from the darkest colours to the light.
It's interesting, we're making marks in really different ways, although it looks like
Yeah.
we're all just scrubbing. You're doing very different squiggly shapes.
Oh, yeah.
Face gone completely rogue there. You're living your best life, aren't you?
Loving
It's
it.
Great.
Loving it. And the final bit of the process is the sky. And the sky is really important to me. Well, firstly, because for months I couldn't look up at the sky. And now I spend every moment I can looking up. And I encourage you all to look up. Whenever you go into a woods, anywhere near trees, especially this time of year with blossom, and Harrogate seems to have the most incredible blossom. If you haven't ever done it before, please, I encourage you, I implore you to go and stand underneath a blossom tree and just look up. And the smells and the sound of bees will overwhelm you. It did with me, and to the point it brought me to tears when I first did it. And now, anytime I see a blossom tree, I'm just straight underneath there looking up. And it's incredible what you can see.
Well, blossom's worshipped in Japan, isn't it, and celebrated. And I was teaching
Sakura, the Sakura Festival.
Sakura, yeah. And I was teaching in in Leeds a few weeks ago, and the Japanese students at the University of Leeds were all standing, looking up and photographing the cherry blossom in this tiny stand on basically a pavement of 3 cherry trees. And all of the other students were just walking past, looking at them going, what are they doing? But you could just see the joy in their faces and that transient beauty. It's really magical.
Yeah, and there's so much I could talk about with blossom. For me, the biggest thing that trees has brought to my life is the fact that life is a bit like a tree. It goes through seasons. You have times for blossoming and blooming, and you have times for wintering and really recouping. You guys are so competitive. Right.
We've spent a bit too long together, haven't we?
Right. We're going to go.
I'm getting all my frustrations out here.
Great. Well, it's a good job to do that first. First thing today. Right. Now we're going to take our blues. Now, you'll notice with my trees, I like to leave a little halo of the pink. It's reminiscent of the time when I lay under the tree and I saw these colours again for the first time. And these pinks are my happy colours. I could go into colour therapy with Faith so much, but we don't have time.
You look gorgeous in pink, by the way. Doesn't she look gorgeous in pink?
Stunning in pink.
My favourite colour. And your pink walking stick. Oh, I'm so jealous. Right, so we're going to leave I'm going to leave a halo of pink around this tree. You can do what you like, it's your tree. But what I tend to do is draw a line, leaving a halo of pink around this tree, all the way around the tree. And then I take the opportunity, when I'm not on a stage in front of people, to belly breathe and really meditate whilst applying the sky. And again, you're going to have to work out the right pressure to use, because I quite enjoy using quite a lot of pressure for this next bit. We're just basically colouring in now. So it's really, really interesting for you guys.
So how long does it take you to typically create one of your large paintings? Because Ems has some phenomenal, huge canvases in her studio.
Her house is full of them. There's enormous works of art.
There's a couple on the slide. Yeah. So those ones are like 1 metre by 30 centimetres. And you tend to put them together into sort of triptychs, quadrics, and however many you like, really. One of my clients has got a beautiful refurbished kitchen, and she's put my trees all around, and it gives me shivers.
And you use gold, don't you, as well?
So these have gold leaf in, pretty much to represent the sun coming through leaves. Again, Japanese have an amazing word for that, and it's totally gone out of my head right now. Komrabi.
I can't remember what it is either.
But we don't have a word for it, but we should, because
they fill something broken with gold, don't they?
They do. They do. So how long does it take for me to do a painting? Well, it entirely depends on the size. These ones here, they're 30 by 100 and a 50 by 100. I'd say they'd take roughly a day, if not more. Mainly because, as I said, the way I paint is therapeutic for me, and I don't want to rush it. And it's so much more. It's about so much more than the product of the painting. It's about me being grounded and having moments of presence in my life. And I think the whole idea of mindful sketching and taking a sketchbook into a woods and doing some exercises. My favourite exercise is to draw your sounds in 3D. So on a page, you're drawing everything you can hear with different types of mark all around you. And if you build that up over about an hour, it's incredible what you can put down, and incredible to think about what you hear across an hour in a wood, especially in London. Yeah. So how are we doing? Oh.
Ta-da.
Are you going to do the big reveal?
I think we're going to have to, aren't we, Faith? Are we ready for this?
Hold on. She's done something extra.
I just.
Well, you can do the highlight in the.
Well, hold on then. Hold on. Hold on a sec.
Can you imagine if we'd been in school together? It would have been awful. Don't copy my work. Oh dear.
You're freestyling, so.
I've gone rogue. I've
She
gone
has
rogue.
gone rogue.
Yeah, sorry.
I wondered what the white was for.
So these water-soluble crayons, very quickly, they're beautiful Caran d'Ache crayons. When you take these home, you can add water. So just add water and it will turn it into a painting.
I'm going to colour everything when I get home. The boys are going to be mortified. My children said to me last night, "Are you going to wear the velvet trousers to the flower show?" I said, "Yes." My eldest went, "Please put them on and leave the house before I wake up."
I'm sorry, but I love your velvet trousers.
And,
I
and,
love them.
and when I got them, there was a jacket available, and I looked at my husband and went, "I promise I would never wear the pair together." And he went, "We both know that would never happen." And you go to parents' evening in the whole suit, and I went, "Yeah, I actually probably would." And it's one of my largest regrets is that I didn't buy the matching jacket.
Okay.
Right, here we go. There we go,
So
everyone.
here we go.
Ta-da!
Art in 10 minutes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think mine looks like a palm tree.
I love
It's
it.
just,
Quite
yeah.
palmy.
It's amazing. I can't remember the last time I just let loose as an adult and did some colouring. It's amazing. Ems, that is fantastic. I mean, we could sit and paint with you all day, and I
Yeah.
hope, because you're here all day, people
am.
can come and talk and do a bit of colouring with her if you want to and explore art. And there are trees out there, so as long as you've got a big coat on today, feel free to go out and have a look. But thank you so much. Can we have a huge Harrogate thank you to Ems Finch, our nature artist?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce our next guest, I just want to ask a quick favour. One of the great stalwarts of the Harrogate Flower Show, Phil Airy from Horticap, is not here today because it's his birthday. And he's built the amazing Three Little Pigs garden that you'll see out in the show gardens outside. And I know he's watching this. So can I ask you just to shout happy birthday after 3? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday! Thank you so much. You've made him an older man very, very happy. Well, welcome, good morning, and a huge, warm-hearted, if slightly wind-chilled morning here at Harrogate. This is the brand new Human Gardener stage, and we have been talking to people all week from the breadth and depth and width of the horticulture industry to share a bit of our love and passion for the great outdoors. My guest now probably doesn't need introducing, but I'm going to introduce us first. I'm Sarah Owen Hughes. I'm a professional horticulturist, and along with my great friend Faith Douglas, who's a curator at a local arboretum, we have pulled in everybody that we know from the industry just to get them on the stage for 15 minutes, for half an hour, just to give you guys a break from all the shopping, somewhere to sit while you're having your coffee, and hopefully inspire you and give you an insight into some of the amazing elements of our industry. Now, obviously, our next guest doesn't need an introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. And he's a GP working tirelessly throughout the NHS, throughout the pandemic. He has been a trainer of GPs. He still does that and inspires the next generation of medics. He is a best-selling author. He is a TV GP. You see him on Good Morning GMTV, is it?
Good Morning Britain.
Good Morning Britain. Good Morning Britain. I'm not very good in the morning, so I don't always sit. And Lorraine as well, we know him from that. And it's an absolute delight and honour to see somebody who's an ambassador for the butterfly conservation, for the wildlife trusts, and somebody who prescribes nature and gardening on the NHS. So can we please have a huge, enormous Harrogate welcome to our nature doctor, Dr. Amir Khan. Now, Amir, we are absolutely thrilled to be here with you. It's an honour for us both. We're both extremely excited. I have one thing to tell you and one thing to ask you, and then I'm going to let Faith take over. The first thing I need to give you is, for anybody who follows him on Twitter and Instagram, his mum, Mama Khan, only let him have one treat last night when they went to the supermarket. Yes. So I've got him some extra Maltesers for the journey home.
Thank you very much. Can I just say, I take my mum shopping to the supermarket every week, and every week she says to me, and we've been doing this since she used to take me when I was 5, but now I take her. But every week she always says, you're allowed one treat only.
And you know, we're both mums of boys and we're both exactly the same. Yeah. My eldest is just about to start medicine at university, and he went, are you going to wear those trousers to the flower show? I said, I'm wearing my velvet trousers for Amir. And he went, please put them on and leave the house before I wake up.
I am loving the trousers. They're amazing.
They're micro velvet. I'll let you fondle them later. So my first question, I know, you can't take me anywhere.
No,
well,
I can't.
You can, but you have to take me back to apologise afterwards. My first question is, obviously when you went through your medical training, you knew you wanted to be a doctor. What was it that drew you towards general practice, being a GP?
So I actually wanted to do paediatrics initially, and I trained at Alderhay in Liverpool, and I spent 3 years there doing paediatrics. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. But I realised that I missed adults. And I missed because the only adults you generally see when you're doing paediatrics are very worried parents, and which is fine, understandable. But I kind of missed the banter you can have with adults. And then when I turned to general practice now, which is quite lovely about the job, is, patients will come and see me and I can talk to them about their ailments and what they're there for. But also we can widen out that conversation into the kind of things that they enjoy doing, because that is such a big part of their kind of well-being and health. And I have so much in common with them. So we often talk about things like gardening. I've got a number of patients who I exchange gardening tips with, which I wouldn't. I could talk to the babies on the neonatal ward about gardening, but I wouldn't get much back. but now, I've got tips. I've even got plants growing in my garden from ones that patients have brought in for me. If I'm really lucky in the summer, I get tomatoes and apples brought in for me. So it's kind of the variety that drew me to general practice, I think. And yeah, I haven't regretted it, because now I get to see kids and adults. So it's a
best of
great,
every world,
great variety.
Yeah.
So I kind of slightly stalk you on Instagram.
I think we all do, don't we, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah, it's very clear. And I see that you put a lot about the natural world, a lot about gardening, about how much it's obvious that you enjoy it, but also how it's beneficial to other people.
Yes.
And that's my bag. That really is my bag. And, what is it, do you think, that's about gardening that is so good for people?
There's so much that's good for us. All of us here are probably here because we like gardening a little bit and we like flowers. And so when you're out in the garden and you come back in, you always feel better. You've spent more time out there normally than what you plan to do. And that's because there are so many kind of physiological, chemical changes going on inside of us when we're out in nature and when we're out gardening. You get the physical health benefits because you're active, and that is great. But as when you're outside with nature in green spaces amongst plants and animals, naturally your stress hormone levels drop. So things like cortisol, which is a stressor, drops, and that will lower your blood pressure, it lowers your heart rate. So already that starts to make you feel better. And then the neurochemicals kick in as well. So things like dopamine and serotonin levels start to go up, and then you start to feel happier and more relaxed. And you want more of that. You might not make that connection, that feeling, I want more of it, but something is happening that makes you feel better. And that's why when you plan to spend an hour in the garden, you normally spend 5 hours in the garden, which is what I tend to do.
Absolutely. Well, I think also sometimes we're a nation of, do not touch, aren't we? We can be, especially at the moment. Yeah. And, I think the message really is for people to don't be afraid to get dirty, don't be afraid to get hands-on.
Yes.
Because that skin contact, so for example, walking on grass barefoot, for example, some people might think a bit weird. That's debatable.
So many benefits.
It lowers heart rate, lowers blood pressure, balances those cortisol levels, and getting dirt on our skin.
Yeah, the microbes in the soil,
Absolutely.
Really good for our microbes as well. Eating fresh, so any of us who are growers of fruit and vegetables in the garden, eating fresh out of there, the microbes that you'll find on those are really good for our essential gut microbiome. So we've got millions of bacteria, viruses and fungi that live in our gut that we've developed over years since we were born, and they are essential to our health. They control almost every part of our well-being. So they actually make a massive quantity of our well-being neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which I mentioned. So if we keep our gut bacteria healthy, and part of that is touching soil because the bacteria there are part of the bacteria that live inside of us, we also feel better. And the thing about gut microbiome, it's kind of a trendy subject at the moment, but it's we in a branch of medicine in terms of trying to get our well-being and upkeep better, because we've all had a really rubbish time, haven't we, over the last couple of years, and we want to feel better, and gardening and wildlife is part of that, but we're just really scratching the surface in terms of what's happening on the inside of us when it happens. And I think it's just so exciting to be in that space.
Yeah, it's great for our mental health, isn't it? And especially with the pandemic. And did you notice during the first lockdown, what did people do? They went outside. It's almost like it's an instinct, isn't it? We know what's good for us. We know we need to go outside. We know we need to sit in the garden. We know, the grass is green. It really is green, isn't it? And it's so good for our anxiety levels. The soil's not only good for our gut, but it's also really good for our. It's an antidepressant. Those microbes have an antidepressant quality in them, which is just fantastic for our mental health, isn't it? So do you actually green prescribe? Do you actually prescribe nature?
So just before the pandemic, the NHS was getting really behind this idea of green prescribing, and we'd set up pilots. I helped set them up through the Wildlife Trust, which I'm the vice president for, and so we'd set up pilots in Somerset and in Dorset, and everything was going really well, and then the pandemic happened, so everything stalled. But now we're getting back into it, and we really understand the well-being effects. And I'm not saying, if you're feeling depressed or low, go outside. Certainly seek medical help as well, but you can do that in conjunction with going outside, and spending time in nature and being mindful of the things around us. And that might be our garden, but not everybody's lucky enough to have a garden. So your local park, beach, anywhere really. If you've got a balcony, get plants on there. If you've got just a wall, get this, wall. Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
These are algal or moss balls that Faith has in her kitchen, and
I'm slightly obsessed with moss balls.
Yeah. But you touch them, and because they need to be handled to maintain their shape, and that process of touching and fondling them, you're connecting with nature in your kitchen, so you can do it even if you're in a flat.
Yeah. We've got to remember that we have evolved alongside nature over millennia, and it's not really until the Industrial Revolution that our paths went in a different direction to nature, and that's I'm not saying it's the only cause for stress and depression, but it's one of the causes of this disconnect that we have with green spaces and wildlife adds to the level of anxiety that many people feel, and getting back out there and being active. And it's not just our mental health. Studies have shown people like who are living with dementia, their dementia progresses slightly less quicker if they are active outside. So if you know someone with dementia, and there's different types of dementia, but particularly Alzheimer's dementia, spend time with them, talk to them, that is brilliant. But if you can do that outdoors, that is better for them.
Yeah, I mean, I always say to people, it doesn't matter where you live, nature's always there, somewhere if you're looking, and that's the key, I think, is if you're looking for it.
Yes.
The sky's always above your head, the ground is always beneath your feet.
Yes.
And we met yesterday, didn't we, the cloud gardener, I don't know if you've come across him, and he literally has a garden on a balcony.
Yeah.
High-rise
18th floor of
apartment.
Manchester,
and it's amazing what you can do on a windowsill. It's amazing what you can do on a tiny balcony. It doesn't have to be a great big grand garden, does it?
It doesn't. Anything, and even if you haven't got any outdoor space, indoor plants provide really good well-being effects as well. So we're lucky, I suppose, in that we have got gardens, but it can be for anyone and everyone. And just get outdoors to your local park. And that is why one of the things I work really closely with the Wildlife Trust is about access to green spaces and making sure everybody has access within walking distance of to a green space, because it's no good me saying to patients, you try and spend some time outdoors in green spaces if they then have to get a bus somewhere. It's just not fair and it's not right. So we're working really hard to make sure all inner city areas across the UK have some level of access to green space.
Well, they actually did studies on even if people cannot get outside for whatever reason, people in hospitals, they're not near a window, just on looking at natural landscapes, so views of beaches, mountains, woodlands, and you have the same reaction versus looking at a cityscape or a traffic jam, or which has a stress response.
It had a real negative reaction, didn't it?
Yes. So just viewing a picture, I spent a number of weeks in hospital a few years ago, and I was in Middlesbrough, which is, a
pretty urban,
proper city, and I live in the woods, so I'd gone from one extreme to the next, and I was thinking, well, how do I really draw upon what I know I need in this environment? I looked out of windows and there was brick walls, there was no nature that I could see, and I wasn't allowed to leave. And hospitals are really clever, and doctors' surgeries is in the pictures on the walls. If you look, they're perfectly placed, aren't they? There are some beautiful landscapes. And some hospitals, I think it's Alderhay Children's Hospital, actually plays birdsong.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. And they have a green roof. They have a green roof. And actually in Harrogate, in our local hospital, if you go for a CT scan, they have cherry blossom on the ceiling as you're going in, so you're looking at nature. And I know hospitals are starting to work, because obviously in the olden days we used to have plants and flowers in hospitals, and there is a risk to our health as well as a benefit having them in, but now it's about having that access, that view through the window.
That's the key. Absolutely. That is really the key, and hospitals are getting wise to it, so they're creating spaces for gardens for the staff as well as for the patients, because they need it as much as anyone, really.
Definitely. So tell us about your garden. What is your garden like?
So I'm a keen wildlife gardener.
Yeah.
I don't have a big garden, so it's not a huge. We're not far from a busy main road either. But I think the key is really, if you make space for nature and you make it welcoming for nature, you get things in. So I'm really conscious of the types of plants I put out there. So things like salvia, malwa, meadow rue, all of those kind of things that will really bring in the insects. We've dug out a pond, which is great because we had frog spawns, which is now tadpoles, and we've still got frogs that come in on the sunny days to kind of just hang out, which is really nice, and we get the odd newt. And my big passion is birds, so I love putting food out for the birds, and we get I'm incredibly lucky. I get such a massive variety of birds. We've got 3 pairs of bullfinches, which I'm really smug about because everybody gets really jealous when I say bullfinches. I'm like, yes, I've got bullfinches, and I've got 3 pairs, and they're fantastic. They've got such great personalities. And we get lots of goldfinches and greenfinches, and greenfinches are a real treat because they're on the red list in terms of numbers in decline, so we're really lucky from that point of view. And we've got blue tits nesting in our garden as well. We do get the odd sparrowhawk, which is magnificent to see but slightly worrying for the bird. And so yeah, lots of that. And we've got hedgehogs out at the moment as well.
I've seen you did a video of your hedgehogs.
I know. So we looked after hedgehogs for a local rescue. I think it was about 1.5 years ago. And the hedgehogs, they'd had a serious infection. One of them had been hit by a car, but they'd all had all of that treated. So they just they weren't well enough to hibernate through the winter, and we gave donations to this local hedgehog rescue place, and they said, they'd been asking us for a while, would you take some hedgehogs just to look after, but I was so busy I couldn't. But with the pandemic, I was coming home every night rather than going to other places, so I said, okay, we'll take a couple. And so my only job, which is the best job in the world, really, is just to fatten up a hedgehog. It's just the best job. Yeah. So all I had to
You have become Mama Khan, haven't you?
Honestly,
fattening up all the wildlife instead of the family.
Yes.
I love that. Did you know that hedgehogs respond to colour therapy?
No, I didn't.
Some carers of hedgehogs use colour therapy to help them feel better, and they respond to crystal therapy. They've been known to get them on their backs and carry a rose quartz around with them.
Really?
Which is a very calming
Gosh, I wish I
crystal
knew that.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So we looked. They had the run of our utility room, and as cute as they are, and they are gorgeous, they are incredibly smelly,
They are.
and they
Yeah.
poo a lot.
Yeah.
So when I thought, fatten up a hedgehog, great. Actually, it was like 20% fattening up a hedgehog, 80% cleaning up a lot of poo. And they somehow managed to get into the tiniest spaces.
Yeah.
So they managed to get behind our washing machine and our fridge freezer, so we were constantly having to pull things out to try and find them again. But we didn't want to keep them in boxes because they like to roam, don't they? So we let them just have the utility room. But I'll be honest, I was really happy when we were allowed to put them out in the garden. Really happy. They still leave us presents, but it feels better when it's out in the garden rather
that's
than in
easier
your
to
utility
easier
room.
to handle,
You're not standing in a pile of pee every now and again. So it's okay. But those ones, they went into hibernation and they've come back out recently, and it's just really nice to see them out. It's just nice. It's just really nice. And it just goes to show, we haven't got a big garden, but it's a really welcoming garden for nature, isn't it? It's a haven. So anyone can do it, I think. And I haven't really got any expertise in gardening. I've just trial and error over many years, and that's it's just.
But that's how we all start, isn't it? And I think
passion.
It's passion. I'd rather have somebody have a go, throw a pack of seeds onto the floor, and them not work, and go, I've learned something, and try again.
Yeah.
Because plants don't actually read the packets.
Yes.
Wildlife doesn't read the instructions, and pests and diseases certainly don't read the instructions and the books that we all have. So it's about just having that courage to have a go. We've done some art today. We've been brave enough as adults to put ourselves out there and have a bit of nature therapy, doing some artwork. Go out and put something in your garden, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, lots of plants have died in the making of my garden, I'll be honest, lots.
That's fine.
That's
Don't
all
keep the labels, because then 5 years down the line, when you realise how much you've spent, it's a bit worrying. But
I've been banned from garden centres because
Yeah,
I just buy too much, which is why I was thrilled when you invited me. I was like, great.
I'm really sorry.
It's not technically a garden centre.
Yeah, make sure you eat first because you should never go shopping here when you're hungry. It's lethal. Yeah.
So, can we ask about Mama Khan's garden?
Yeah, yes.
And when you were growing up, was your mama into gardening? Did she take you out in the garden?
No, not at
there?
all, really. So we didn't, I had a very kind of inner city childhood. It was great, we were out on our bikes all the time, but we didn't have a garden because we had, back-to-back terraced housing, and so we didn't really have a garden per se. We didn't do any gardening, but I was constantly out in the woods and constantly out in green spaces, and I think that kind of ignited my passion for nature. And my dad was really into kind of just watching wildlife programs. That was the big thing that we had in common. So I would go out. He was very unwell at the time for most of my childhood, but it was fine because I would go out, see all these, incredible animals. It was really bizarre. So kind of growing up in an inner city kind of working class family, you don't really get that exposure to nature, which is part of why I'm so passionate that everybody gets that exposure to nature. So I would be in school, in primary school, and I'd look in these books that we were given and was saying, what, these animals live here in the UK? I've never seen them, like things like badgers and foxes and deers. I was like, this just looks incredible.
Yeah.
And then as I got older and I went out to explore and saw those things, and I used to come back and tell my dad, I was like, Dad, it's true, what those books said was true. These animals are here. And he was very excited that I'd seen them, and then we'd watch nature documentaries together, and then that turned into gardening kind of documentaries. And it wasn't until, I bought my own house that I started gardening and really understanding the well-being effects of it and researching the science behind that. Because I think if I'm going to talk about it with my patients, there's got to be real evidence behind it.
Absolutely.
And there is absolute evidence behind it. It's not
No,
woo-woo.
it's not.
And it all works in conjunction with conventional medicine as well. And I think that's what's so nice about it.
Yeah, fantastic. So what is your favourite plant?
Oh, that's a good question. I've got to say a foxglove.
Oh.
Wow.
Because I love the sound bees make as they go in, because their buzzing kind of turns really high pitched, doesn't it, as it resonates around one of the little flowers, and you can see them vibrating, and they come out and they're all dusty when they come out, and it's just so cute. I love it.
I find that really fascinating because foxgloves are hugely toxic. They're one of the most toxic garden plants.
Yes.
In the right dose, but also they're hugely therapeutic. So
They
you
are.
will prescribe Digitalin to your patients,
Digoxin,
which is
yeah.
a heart medication from those plants. Isn't that interesting? You've chosen a dangerous but hugely therapeutic plant that's great for wildlife.
Well, our medicine comes from the plant world, doesn't
Yes,
it?
as does all our
Fundamentally,
alcohol.
It comes from the plant world.
I think
It
I like
does.
this one better.
I don't drink.
I forage because I'll do anything for free food.
Oh dear.
But it does. You're
It
right.
does, yeah.
And you're right. It does. You're absolutely right. So much of our medicine and so much more of our future medicines will come from the plant world as well. So that's another reason why we have to protect our green spaces.
Absolutely. So if you were to give one piece of advice to people watching here and people listening about how they would get more exposure to the natural world, to green spaces, what would you suggest they do?
I would say we're all super busy, like really busy, but take some protected time out for yourself. And really ring fence it and say, no, you're not being selfish. Give yourself permission to do it. Allow that time for you. Find a piece of your garden or the park or somewhere that you like and say, right, this time, on this day, I'm going to go into that space. And it's just for me. It's not for anything else. I'm not going to take the kids. I'm not going to take the other half. We'll leave them at home. It's just for you. Go there and immerse yourself in it and just immerse yourself in the sounds and the sight, and you don't have to think about anything else. And just by doing that, all these tiny, tiny reactions will be going on inside of you that will make you feel better in the long term. And the more of that you do, it's not selfish. It's the right thing for you to do. The better you'll feel.
It's self-worth, isn't it?
It is.
And it's about making nature a habit, a healthy habit, isn't it?
Yeah, really is.
Well, I'm sure we could all talk to our doctor, our friendly local GP, all day. But Amir, you've just been such an inspiration to us. Thank you so much for that. Faith, I think you have a gift for Amir as well.
Oh, on top of the Maltese.
Yeah. This is her book, The Nature Remedy, and I can thoroughly recommend making a moss bath mat. As a mother of teenage boys, I no longer have wet towels in my bathroom because they stand on the moss bath mat. It all drains away, and we've got something living that they connect with for 20 seconds every morning. Can you all put your hands together for the warmest of thank yous to Dr. Amir Khan, our nature gardener? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Very odd. Even if it has been playing a big war, people
This is so funny. Look at them with their backs.
Right. Okay, are we going to turn around?
A very warm good afternoon, everyone. It's warm-hearted, if slightly chilly from outside. Come and have a sit down, eat your lunch. Welcome, very, 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 very warm welcome to the Human Gardener Stage. This is a brand new initiative at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. We're delighted to welcome you aboard. We are interviewing people from the breadths and widths and depths of horticulture and related industries to find out a little bit more about the people behind the plants. And we're now interviewing a super exciting lady about some fantastic projects that she's involved with. I'm Sarah Owen Hughes. I'm a professional horticulturist, and I've been volunteering at the show for maybe 10 years. And I'm delighted to be here talking to people that I've connected with over the years. And I'm here with my friend Faith Douglas, who's a curator at a local arboretum. Now, Faith is actually a trustee of the charity that we're going to talk about now. So she's going to lead the interview. And we're going to be talking to Liz Ware, who is a garden writer and historian and founder of the charity Silent Space. She has a weedy but productive allotment in South Oxfordshire, and I think it's all the better for being weedy.
Oh, yes.
So can we give a very warm Harrogate welcome to Liz Ware, the quiet gardener.
So thank you very much for joining us, Liz. I have to say, Liz is a great friend of mine, and we met quite similar to Ems on Twitter, wasn't it? I think
we did.
You
Yes.
sent me a message out of the blue. Hello, I heard you do forest bathing. I was like, yes, that's me. And we connected, didn't we? And we met and hit it off. And I just love. At the time, it was a concept, wasn't it? It was an idea.
It was a very new idea.
It really
I'd had the idea for a long time, but
Yeah.
it was just at the very beginning.
baby stages, wasn't
Yeah.
it? And it was just something that I'm really passionate about, and I just think it's fantastic. And it's fantastic to sit back and watch it grow and change the way it has. And I was absolutely honoured to be asked to be a trustee of Silent Space, which of course I accepted. I don't know how good I am at that role, but I do my best. So Liz Ware, tell us a little bit more about Silent Space.
Well, Silent Space, can you hear me all right? It's a small charity, and it encourages gardens open to the public, parks and gardens, to keep an area where people can just be silent. It's a little bit like the quiet carriage on the train. We, the visitors in the space, are silent, but the sounds of the garden, the world outside carry on around us. And generally, gardens use areas that visitors already enjoy. So there's no need for extra maintenance. And that's really important because gardens don't have extra staff or extra resources hanging around the place with nothing to do. So the gardeners choose their space, and they also choose the time that the space runs. So that could be some gardens run their spaces permanently, others for just a few hours a week, as little as a few hours a week.
So how exactly did you decide to set up Silent Space? Talk us through the process.
I'll try and do a brief version. So I write about gardens for magazines, and I used to take the photographs as well. And I'd be in really beautiful gardens early in the morning to catch the light. And if I was lucky, there'd be a little gap between taking the photographs and the time I would start interviewing the head gardener. So I'd be on my own in this really beautiful, biodiverse space with no responsibility for anything, just soaking up the birdsong and the beauty. And you know, it made me feel wonderful. And that calm and that lovely sense of relaxation would stay with me for the rest of the day. And I thought, there's got to be a way of sharing this more widely, because what a privilege to have that opportunity to be somewhere beautiful with just permission, really, to be silent. But I didn't do anything about it. You know how it is. You have an idea, but you're busy, your life's busy. I had family, kids, and so I didn't do anything about it. And then 2015, my mum had a dementia diagnosis, and it wasn't one of those long, slow declines. It was very sudden. And my parents, who lived 2 hours away, suddenly needed a lot of help. And writing to deadline was incredibly stressful. So I thought, you know, there's that idea for silent space. Why don't I try and get that going? And in fact, my mum got really involved and interested in it. That's another, which kind of fits with what Dr. Amir Khan was just saying, but that's kind of another side story. So I took the idea to some head gardeners who knew me because of the contact through writing. And I said, I'd really like to know what would happen if we asked people visiting a garden to switch off their phones and stop talking. And I was really lucky. They said, yeah, let's give it a go. So June 2016, they decided to to put on a trial 4 Sundays. They actually started on my birthday. I didn't tell anyone that, but it felt like a good sign somehow. So it ran for those 4 Sundays. Now, collecting feedback was... Am I talking too much? Did you want to...
No, keep going.
Keep going, okay. So collecting feedback was going to be a little bit tricky, because if you're creating a space where people can be silent, you don't want to be chasing after them with a feedback form. So we got people on visitor reception to talk to people about the concept as they came in, and nobody said, what do you mean, switch off your phone? Nobody said that. Everybody said, oh, what a lovely idea. Life's too busy, we just need that reminder to be silent. So that was fine. But of course, we didn't know whether those people actually went into the space. So we had to find another way of recording what was going on in the space. So we tied notebooks, really nice notebooks that you'd like to write in, with garden twine, fixed them on the benches in the spaces, and then waited to see what would happen. I had no idea what sort of response we'd get. You know, would people say to us, well, you could be doing this better, or I didn't like that? It was nothing like that. It was really moving to see the responses. So people drew pictures. They wrote poems. They left quotes. And really wonderful things. And the words that were there most often were thank you. And thank you for all kinds of things. Thank you for the silence. Thank you to the gardeners. Thank you to God, to the universe. It was gratitude and creativity. It was just bubbling up to the surface. And just remember, we hadn't done anything except put up a little board that said, when you're in this part of the garden, switch off your phones and be quiet. It was that simple. So the trial had obviously worked. And so it's been growing steadily ever since. Obviously, with the pandemic shutting things down for a while. So
I think it's really interesting you say about how people needing permission to,
yes,
in particular, switch their mobile phones off, because we're a society of being constantly available, aren't we? We have to be available. You've got to respond, or you've got to be available for somebody. And actually, you know, I find with some of the people I work with, when you say, right, switch off your mobile phone, first of all, there's a little bit of anxiety comes to the surface. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And once they do it, the relief that washes over people because they are no longer available is just unbelievable. And whilst, you know, the technology is great, it's useful, it's helpful, we need a balance, don't we?
We do.
And it's so important to be allowed. We need to give ourselves permission. One thing, because I've tried to introduce silent space up north, because you're mostly based down south, aren't you?
Well, all over.
Yeah, but you live down south,
I
don't
live
you?
down there,
So
yes.
when I've spoken to people about bringing silent space into the garden, one of the first things they say to me, well, it's not quiet. A garden's not quiet. What would your response be to the fact that, well, it's not that kind of silence?
I think if it was about the garden being quiet, I would have called it silent spaces.
Yeah.
But it's about us being quiet. That space is in us. And it's giving us permission to be silent. And we want to hear the bird song, don't we? And the birds in the trees. And if there happens to be a bit of work going on, or in the part of the world I live in, constant airplanes, well, you can't stop them. So you've just got to be quiet with them.
So silent space has spread countrywide, hasn't it? But it's also gone global. So why don't you tell us a little bit about...
this was a shock.
About some of the gardens that are actually in silent space, especially the one globally.
Okay, shall I do the global one
yeah,
first?
go for it.
Yeah, so after my mum died, I took a bit of time off and I went to New Zealand and Australia for a few months. Am I in front of this? I'm not sure. Someone said to me when they knew I was travelling, there's a Botanic Garden conference down in New Zealand. Why don't you see if they'll let you put up a stand and talk about what you're doing? So I contacted them and they agreed to do that. And then I was sitting at Heathrow and I got a phone call from the organisers and they said, well, somebody's dropped out. We've got a 10-minute slot just before the keynote speaker. Would you like to talk? Well, I'm terrified. I don't really like public speaking, but you don't turn down an offer like that, do you? So that's what I did. And in fact, because it was just before the keynote speaker, most people were off going to the loo or getting a cup of coffee, but it landed where it needed to. There was someone there from Sydney Botanic Garden who decided he'd like to try it with schools in some of the less well-off areas of New South Wales, so that's what's happening. And someone from Dunedin Botanic Garden in New Zealand decided that she'd like to try running a silent space trail because their garden is open to the public 24/7. So to have a space was going to be just left for silence was going to be difficult. So that's what's happened.
So what about some of the gardens that are included in this country then? So
maybe Yorkshire would be a good idea, wouldn't it, to say? So Harlow Carr has a silent space. It's right at the very, I don't know whether it's north, south, east or west, but at the very furthest point.
Is it where the Arboretum is? There's an Arboretum
yes, the very end of the Arboretum.
Yeah.
Newby Hall has Sylvia's Garden, is their silent space. Thorpe Perrow?
Yeah, we have a little area in Autumn Bay too, which is ours is a dedicated bench, essentially, with a little sign up for people to go and sit and just be quiet. So, yeah, it's lovely.
I mean, we have a list of suggestions for gardens who decide to join us when they're thinking about the area they might choose. And one is that it should be biodiverse or have a good view, because that helps us to relax. If there's a distraction, a lovely distraction. To think about helping people to feel safe, but not claustrophobic. Ideally, space for people to walk and sit. That's probably about
Yeah.
it.
I mean, the great thing about it, I think, is that the gardens are sort of have a freedom, don't they, to make it work for them.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not a concept that it must be like this. It every single silent space is completely different, and some move them around. I think does Newby sometimes move them around?
Well, they did talk about doing that. I'm not sure whether it's actually. I don't
some
think it's
move them around
but
to highlight parts of the garden, which is fantastic.
Yes.
And the lady in New Zealand, hers is a trail, so you follow the trail. And there's
so other people in the garden will be doing their normal walking around the garden, but people who've chosen to follow the silent space trail will walk silently. I think that's just a lovely idea.
Fantastic. I might pinch that idea.
I think it could work in lots of gardens.
Work really well.
Actually. Yeah.
So what's coming up next for Silent Space? What's happening in the future?
Well, people come to us with all kinds of ideas that I wouldn't have thought of, perhaps. So the University of East Anglia got in touch a couple of years ago and said they would like to set up a space for postgraduate students because they felt they were under a lot of pressure. So there's a great space working there now. And now Dundee University have just set up 3 spaces. There are a few more universities that are interested too. Great Torrington Town Council down in Devon contacted me and wanted to set up a space in the town, in a community garden for people with dementia, and that just started running in the autumn. So I'll get in touch with them again in a couple of months and see how that's going. So once someone comes up with an idea, we give it a go, and if it works, it seems to pull in other people to try and set up something similar. We have we are possibly working with a garden, a hospital garden, well-being for staff in the southeast at the moment. I'm not going to name it because it's just at the very, very early stages. But if that works, maybe we can do more of them.
Well, it sounds really exciting for the future, and I'm very, very grateful to be involved.
It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Liz Ware from Silence Space, for coming to talking to us. And I think it's something we could all take on board within our own gardens, finding that little silence, couldn't we? So thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I sound so northern when I say that. Good afternoon. I'm going to say it again. A very warm-hearted, if slightly cold, welcome to the Harrogate Spring Flower Show and our brand new Human Gardener stage. We're here all weekend to talk to the most inspiring people from all breadths, depths and reaches of horticulture. Some people you might not have even considered as being part of horticulture, but it's a huge industry with some really, really interesting people that we've met along our journeys. My name is Sarah Owen Hughes and I'm a professional horticulturist, and I'm here with my cohort, my partner in crime, Faith Douglas, who is a curator at a local arboretum. And our next guest today is Paul Holden Ridgway. Now, Paul is our herbal gardener. He's a former Royal Marine. He is a distiller and a master brewer up at Black Sheep. Have you heard of Black Sheep Brewery? Of course you have. A mixer of malts and hops, an alchemist. His real passion is wilderness and tracking skills. He's fascinated by foraging and harnessing the power of wild plants. And he's just passed me something that I don't know what it is in a cup. So can you please put your hands together and give a really warm welcome to Paul Holden Ridgway.
Can I just say, Sarah, I know Paul quite well. We're friends, as well as colleagues, work colleagues. And in passing you that, he's got this bad habit of saying, eat this, taste this, do that. And the thing is, you do it without question. I have half of the time, and then it's afterwards, and I say,
what was that?
What was that? What have I just eaten? Is that okay? Don't you?
Yeah, I sometimes do it to myself as well without realising. Oh God, what have I just eaten?
I did that once with a group of adult learners, and I took them on a weed walk, a foraging walk around the campus.
Yeah.
And I remember the vice principal, I realised I had an extra person walking behind me, and it was the vice principal decided to join in because we'd stopped at a hawthorn hedge, and they're all picking the hawthorn, the young hawthorn leaves, and eating them. And she said, I just saw these adults with their faces into the hedge and thought, she's doing something that she shouldn't be doing. I need to find out more. So tell me, Paul, because I mean, you wouldn't assume that a Royal Marine would end up doing some of the things that you're doing. How did you get into what you're doing now?
Well, the brewing was by accident. I broke my neck in a car crash, left the military. Prior to joining the military, I'd worked in a pub as a kid.
Yeah.
So after about 5.5, 6 years being completely out of work, couldn't do anything, I managed to sort of take my own recuperation into my own hands. And I don't recommend this for everyone, sort of doing everything which the doctors told me not to do, because my choice was I had an employment consultant give me about a 20% chance of getting back into full-time employment, and I think that was my reality check right there. I either need to take control of this and see where it goes and risk potentially more damage, or I could go with it. And I was still young, still relatively fit, and so I chose that line. Ended up back in the pubs.
Yep.
Wanted to learn more about beer, so volunteered at Roosters Brewery in Knaresborough.
Which is where I met you, I think. Yeah.
So I worked for them for free, doing all sorts of the jobs people didn't really want to do. And so they taught me about brewing, and then I ended up at Black Sheep Brewery. So that's how I ended up doing that. And as far as the tracking, the survival, that sort of stuff, when I was a kid, I was always fascinated by anything on TV about somebody living in the woods or somebody stranded on a desert island. And so I got the opportunity to, obviously being in the forces, spend a lot of time out in the wilderness. And then when I left, due to breaking my neck, it gave me an awful lot of time to read. So I started not only sort of looking at how to sort of treat myself physically, but also as far as doing stuff I couldn't do, and that was getting out into the wild, which I really missed.
So you now use herbs, don't you? Use herbs and wild plants and flowers to treat yourself. Because we were just talking earlier, I have an allergy to gluten, so I can't eat anything fun, and I can't enjoy the beer that he brews. And you immediately said, people using plantain now to help cure or to help alleviate the symptoms of that, which I didn't know. And I've done a lot of reading into my allergy because I don't want to put an EpiPen in my leg. So what are you doing with herbs and plants and wildflowers? How are you using them?
So about 5-6 years ago, I ended up with whooping cough. And at the time, as you know, I also had a pub in Knaresborough.
Yeah.
Doctors were like, there's no way you've got whooping cough. It's Victorian era. Children generally get it. Just my luck, I got it. Anyway, with having a pub as well, my wife, my staff, my myself were always getting colds and flus, just by virtue of always being in contact with lots of other people. So I started looking at what can I do to boost my immune system, rather than taking all these medications and all this sort of stuff, because I've been on a lot of medication prior to when I had my accident, and I just didn't want to go down that line. So I started looking at stuff to boost my immune system, modulate my immune system, and look at your typical vitamin C, your vitamin D, all that sort of stuff we know about. And so what I started doing was going out. I was already relatively au fait with sort of looking at plants and identifying things, but once I started looking at this stuff and with the fungi and the plants, then started treating it myself. So I'd be dehydrating it, whether it was in an airing cupboard, radiator at first, and then bought myself a dehydrator, and then I'd be making powders, making extractions in water, distilling, which some people were relatively not happy about in the pub, and that sort of thing. Everybody was like waiting for a big explosion, given sort of my background in doing stuff. There was a few. I was a bit worried as well, and so I started treating myself, and then I started noticing this difference of feeling better. I was getting the financial benefit of not spending money on drugs, and also when everybody else around me was getting colds, flus, all sorts of stuff, I was totally fine. And so that opened up a can of worms, really, because then I started looking into everything, and it's learning new stuff every day. And the beauty of it is what was once folklore is now there's hard science proving all of this stuff. And I think the next 10, 20 years is going to be really exciting.
We're losing plants at a rate of knots, so we're going back to them to try and find out what properties they have that we can use. I'm going to have to divert because this is incredible. It looks like slightly dirty tap water, and I've just been drinking it and not actually asked Paul what it is he's given me. So if I keel over, there's St John's ambulance outside. What is this?
Oh, it smells. What does it smell like?
It smells like pea soup, but it tastes really sweet and really green.
So it's
what have you done to us, Paul?
So this is pine buds. This is
pine.
Yeah, this is
Amazing.
Fresh pine buds. It's got nettles in it, and it's also got cleavers. So goosegrass.
Oh,
it's the cleavers I can smell.
Yeah, it's cleavers. Very fresh, very green.
So it's quite lemony as well.
Yeah. So tell me what benefits I'm getting other than hydrating. What benefits am I getting from this herbal tea?
In the pine buds, pine needles, all year round, so think Christmas trees, there's enough, if you have a cup of pine needle tea, it's equivalent to about vitamin C of 6 lemons.
Goodness.
So in the nettles, you get a lot of vitamin D. It's very rich in iron as well. It's mildly internally, what's the term?
Diuretic.
Yeah, it is a diuretic, so be
diuretic,
careful. Yeah.
oh dear.
Anti-inflammatory. It's mildly anti-inflammatory as well. And the goosegrass, the cleavers, are really good for detoxifying your lymphatic system as well. So if you're getting over an infection, again, very rich in vitamin C. And the nice thing is with learning about this sort of stuff and treating yourself or treating somebody else, you don't really need anything more other than hot water. So it's dead easy. And if you want to dehydrate the plants, because only some of the plants are available some of the time in some of the areas, pine needles are a little bit different because they're there all year round. You can collect, preserve, and keep it for the rest of the year till the new season comes in. So it's
getting wonderful aroma of pine, but sort of not domestos type pine. It's a really light,
it's real pine,
springy pine, isn't it?
Pine.
When I lived in France and actually in Norway, they have a lot of pine sweets that they use as throat sweets, and it's very reminiscent of being in the Alps.
Yeah, well, even balsam fir, they put that into toilet paper because it's soothing.
Yes.
And also, when you make this, particularly if somebody does have a cold, you can get your face over it before you drink it. And the essential oils help unclog your sinuses. So there's another one there.
Pine is really good for our respiratory system as well. So it's for coughs, colds, chest infections, that sort of thing. So I drink pine needle tea. I'm asthmatic. I drink pine needle tea a lot.
So it's quite clear why you're doing this, because you quite clearly are passionate and love it. Do you obviously you've got your full-time job as a brewer. How do you incorporate this either in your daily life or in your sort of your personal life? Do you run courses? Do you inspire people?
So I run courses, and I'm quite often out in the woods anyway. I do a lot of woodland archery, or I just go walking in the woods because I'm always interested.
Rogue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because like I said, some of the plants are only available some of the time, same with the fungi. And so you've got to be out and immerse yourself in nature all the time, otherwise you're just going to miss opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, it's what might be there one day is gone the next day. And particularly with fungi, you know, they can be there for one day and then you've lost them.
Yep.
So it's really important to get out there and do it. And the nice thing is, particularly with the internet today, you can learn all this for free.
Yep.
But if you want to go out and experiment, you've got to be cautious.
Please be careful. Please don't put anything in your mouth unless you absolutely know for 100% what it is. There's been some very famous fatal accidents where foragers have eaten something by mistake. So to make sure you're with somebody who knows the woods and understands the woods and the plants. But what a great way of getting back into nature. And I mean, I've got 2 rules, which is obviously make sure you know what it is and never pick anything from below your waist height. In case, particularly near paths, if there's been dogs nearby. What rules do you have when you're foraging?
Absolutely 100% positive ID.
Yep.
The nice thing is you don't have to be a botanist to learn this sort of thing. You know, for example, just one sec. So I picked some fresh horse chestnut leaves this morning. We all know what horse chestnut tree is. Conker tree.
Yep.
Kids are forever knocking them out the trees. And that is anti-fungicidal. It's antiseptic and it contains natural soap. So when you are leading a course outside and you're like, oh, well, you know, you've just been preparing meat or poultry or something like that, how do you clean yourself? Well, just go and pick
One
some
of those
leaves.
with a bit of water,
now, if you don't have these in the area, you can go and pick birch leaves. They've got natural soaps in it. And again, you can use them for tea as well. So it's not difficult. If you know, the way I like to do it is when I first get people out, they're like, oh God, how do you learn all these trees? So the first one typically will identify, it's like, well, what's this? And I'll be pointing out a pine tree. And quite often the response is, oh, it's a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And you're like, right, okay, well, you've just identified a tree, but that tree probably has at least 24 uses. You know, you can make bread from it.
Yeah.
You can collect the yeast off it to do some fermentations. You've got the pine needles for tea. You've got the essential oils off it. You can use the rootlets for cordage. You can use the resin to dress wounds. You can use it for, again, essential oils. You can use it to accelerate a fire when it's wet conditions. You can use the bark to make baskets. You know, it's and that's one tree, and that's just some of the uses. If you then went to a birch tree, you know, all of a sudden you've got 1 tree or 2 trees and probably 48 different uses. It's that easy. You don't need the scientific names to learn this sort of stuff.
I'll tell you something, I'm going to be looking into the woodlands in Knaresborough with a bit more interest, with open eyes, but also a little bit more cautiously, because you're going to be somewhere in the undergrowth, aren't you? I'm sure we'll bump into you.
Yeah, I have been caught. What are you doing?
The first time I ever met him, somebody said to me, if you ever want a knife sharpening really well, go speak to Paul. And that just made me slightly nervous, but now I know that you're actually perfectly safe to be around. Paul, that's been incredible. The time has flown by, but thank you so much. A big thank you to Paul Holden Ridgway, our herbal gardener.
Cheers, thank you very much.
Thank you.